Well, everybody, we're back with another episode of the Steel Target Paint podcast. It's been a while. Steve's here. Steve, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I was at the Wyoming Antelope Club this afternoon, shooting a little 5 to go with 4 guns. You know, I've ventured into the optic sight revolver, so gonna need a lot of range time trying to bring that gun into the foray of trying to get it really good. How about yourself? You done any shooting lately?
Man, you know, we had the Georgia State Steel Challenge match that kind of kicked off the 2019 shooting season, and then this past weekend, shot the South Carolina. Let me back up. The Steel Target Paint South Carolina State Steel Challenge match, and so that was a great time. But there's a lot of matches coming up, Jeff. We're right in the throes of it all.
Absolutely. Well, you know that Georgia match kicked off the season, and let's talk about that for a second. You know, last year we shot in what for me was subarctic weather. It was, I think, 34 degrees when we started shooting on Friday. This year they moved it a little later in the season. I think that was a really good choice. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking with Glenn Weber. He's the match director. He pushed it out a month due to the Super Bowl being in town in February. So thank goodness that happened. So I've petitioned him hard. I've started buying him gifts and see if we can move it to March every year because, man, the last couple of years when I shot the Georgia match, it's like 38 degrees in the shade and, man, sometimes it gets up in the high 50s in the afternoon. But this past, a couple of weeks ago when we shot it, it was a pretty pleasant experience. So I really enjoyed it.
I think I started every day with a sweatshirt on, and by about, I don't know, 4th stage, I took my sweatshirt off, and then the clouds would come in, and I'd put my sweatshirt back on. But, we weren't in long sleeve parkas, hats, and gloves like we were last year. So hopefully Glenn will take all the encouragement you've given him and keep him active every year.
Hey, we need to post his address so maybe people start sending him stuff. Maybe not unicorns, but something that he would like.
His number is 555. Please give Glenn a call. So, well, you had a pretty good showing at Georgia, but I want you to share something with the people that we don't like to hear, but happened to you. And you had a gun go down, didn't you?
Wow, Jeff, I'm telling you what, despite all the planning and preparation and testing and, to make sure all your gear is correct and all, just ready to rock and roll. And what I've done is I typically don't break down my guns right before the night of a big match. I try to shoot them a little bit and to make sure that everything's fine. And then I got to, I think it was the morning session on Saturday, got to the first stage and my semi-automatic gun. Yeah, it turned into a bolt action gun. And so I was like, oh my goodness. And it was one of my favorite divisions to shoot. And I thought for sure I could have taken home another Georgia State Steel Challenge championship with it. And yeah, what are you going to do? I kind of fought through it for the first 2 stages, took it down to the save table and walked through all the basic stuff that I know to do, and I still couldn't find it. But you know what? The good news is I've got it resolved. But I'm telling you what, it's tough to go out and shoot a great time after you have gun issues because you try to shoot in that subconscious zone, and you can't really be thinking about anything else when you're trying to lay down some good times. And yeah, that was definitely in the back of my head the rest of the match. So we got it all. Contacted the manufacturer, walked through a couple of simple items and found out what it was. It's probably the 5th thing on my list, not the top 3 or 4 things that I checked. But hey, what are you going to do? Those things happen. These are mechanical devices. And yeah, no, we're ready to rock and roll now.
Well, that's good. And, I think everyone should realize too, that this wasn't the last gun you were shooting for the match. It was, I'm pretty sure, dead square in the middle of the match, wasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was.
And so you had to stay composed, and you still had other guns to shoot. And that's something to, I mean, you could have got all, bent out of shape and upset, and all that would have done was impacted the further shooting you had to do. I mean, you still were shooting, I'm guessing you were shooting 2 guns that session, so you still had a single gun to shoot that session as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Jeff, the aspect of the game that compounds it is, there's so many great shooters out in the sport. And in USPSA magazine, they shared some statistics, and maybe we need to get Zach Jones back on the podcast to walk through the amount of increase of activity and membership and major matches over the last couple of years of what's happened to Steel Channels, really exploding. So the level of competition is far greater this year than it has been in the last year or the year before. And so you've got Grant Kunkel that came over from Arkansas. Man, he's like, "Hey, Steve, is it a good match?" I said, "Yeah, great. It's a great match. Why don't you come over?" Man, that kid threw down a 66, 26, somewhere in there, and rimfire rifle open. I was like, holy cow. So, you had that staring down the barrel of the gun, no pun intended. And then you had Chris Barrett, which is just a beast. And there's some other fantastic shooters out there still left to shoot. And, to have a gun issue happen, oh, man, I'm telling you what, it was – at first I got a little bit frustrated, a little bit frazzled. And then, I said, hey, I'm going to start the afternoon and rimfire rifle open, and I'm going to swing for the fences. So I wrote a brief blog post about all that, shooting 525 on Smoke and Hope. And, I just threw all caution to the wind, and I just opened it right up, swung the gun as fast as I could. And I'd been practicing Smoke and Hope because, some of these other folks I see out there shooting it are right at the 6 or sub 6. And I'm just trying to think, man, how am I going to do that without throwing out a hip, Jeff? So, kind of threw caution to the wind and connected on 3 smoking ones and one that's really, really good. And so, and then I went into, oh man, this is really good. Now I need let's shoot a little bit more conservatively than that. So yeah, it was the Georgia match was an interesting one to kick off the season. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Well, I mean, I read all your blog posts, but since we have this forum here, why don't you throw a little self-promotion there and let everybody know where they can find your blog posts?
Yeah, if you go out to stevefostershooting.com, I list all my sponsors out there, and so there's various discount codes out there. I list all my sponsors out there, and then I've got a section that's called blog or blog post. And so if you go out there, I try to share them out on my competitor page out on Facebook. But if you sign up for notifications anytime I publish a blog post, I try to do it at least once a month. Sometimes there's 2 to 3 a month, depending on what's going on. And the last one that I posted was about shooting smoke and hope, just kind of what was going through my mind in the scenario and the situation. And boy, it was probably, Jeff, the best that I've ever shot. And I think I shot a 65-69, which is by far the fastest time that I've shot. I've shot some 67s and 68s, and I've shot quite a few under 70. But a 65-69, I really try not to keep track of my time, so to speak. I like to hear my times, but I don't, keep track of them. But I knew that running into outer limits and then roundabout were my last 2 stages, and it's an 8-stage match. I had 6. I had 1 blazing one, and I shot a low 6 on showdown, so I knew that something special was going on. So when I got to outer limits, I'm like, man, don't trip over the box. So I tried to shoot conservative, and I shot conservative on roundabout, and it turned out pretty good for me. So it was cool.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on that time. And, again, just pointing out to everybody, Steve shot the best he ever shot with his rimfire rifle open after having a gun go down. And he didn't let that impact him. So, take that to heart, everybody. That, these are the kind of things you got to do at a match. You can get yourself all, jacked up, but all you're going to do is get all jacked up. You're not going to help your shooting at all. So congratulations on that, Steve. So last weekend.
Thanks, Jeff.
Last weekend, South Carolina Steel Target Paint Championships, or however you want to say it. It's, all those words are in there in some different order.
Easy for you to say.
Exactly. But another great match, shooting the speed stages. We did not shoot outer limits and did not shoot did not shoot outer limits or speed option, which, I like this format. I really do. I mean, speed option and outer limits are somewhat of more difficult stages, but you want to keep a match on time. Run just these 6 stages because we finished on time every day. And I had a lot of fun shooting those stages and shooting that match. How about you?
I really like the six stage format for exactly what you talked about. And, I think the other part outside of the sheer number of stages, whether it's 6 or 8, dropping the 2 stages like speed option and outer limits and painting those back targets, I think that really helps speed up the game as well, which is pretty cool. And, for some of us, speed option, and that's actually one of my favorite stages right now. And then also outer limits, I think that can differentiate, some of the top shooters out there, and that could either make or break some folks. I really don't mind shooting them, but the 6-stage format, I really, really, really like. And maybe we do some sort of rotation at some of these major matches. I think at the World Speed Shoot and the U.S. Steel Shoot, you're always going to have to really shoot the 8.
I think you need to have 8. I think you do need to have 8 at those majors, but my shameless plug coming up right now, at the Wyoming Antelope Club for the West Florida Steel Challenge Championships, we shoot the 6 speed stages. And for those that haven't been on Facebook, that match is again going to happen in 2019. And it's going to be the same 6 stages. It's going to be the same low price of $45 a gun. It will be the 3rd weekend in July. We're going to have 2 sessions on Saturday and 1 session on Sunday. So everybody can come shoot 3 sessions and still get out of Dodge at a relatively good time and hopefully make it home on Sunday. And, I'm hoping to see a lot of people there. I've had a number of people that weren't able to make it last year contact me saying, when does registration open? And the answer to that is going to be right after the World Speed Shoot. So it will be on matchsignup.com, and I hope to see a lot of our listeners there. It's a fun match. As you well know, it is a very different place to shoot.
Oh, it certainly is, and hopefully it won't rain as much as what it did last time.
Well, our good friend Vince Taparowski sent me a message, and he says you ought to bill it as the weather's going to be better than last year. But I can't guarantee that because it is Florida, so you never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. No, that's a fun place. And you know what? I've traveled around the country shooting matches, and I would say, and maybe we talked about this on the previous guest, but I think the level of professionalism and the quality of the ROs and how well that match runs is top notch. One of the best that I've ever shot. So hats off to the group of folks that you have there for sure.
We have a tremendous Red Hat crew. Those are our range ROs, our discipline ROs, and they support all of our level 2 matches. We run 2 USPSA level 2 matches, and now our level 2 steel. And a shout out to our 2 discipline leaders, Dan Bernard and Mark Walker. Their leadership, helps us stay the course on providing just that, and we've talked about this a lot, you and I together and on the podcast and off the podcast, but, there are certain things that a lot of shooters are looking for in a match. I believe it's start on time, have the stages set up properly, have good ROs, and have it at a fair price. Sure. And if you do those things, not much anything else really matters. It's nice to have a prize table. It's nice to have a raffle table. I might add that having dedicated painters is a huge plus because we did have that, and everybody
preach, brother, preach.
Giving the shooters a chance to focus on painting or not painting and just shooting is it was a key aspect. And those kids really they work their butts off, and and they got a lot of good tips. Not just shoot fast, pull the trigger. I'm talking about monetary tips, and that was good to see because I think a lot of people really appreciated what they did for them. So
yeah, as a shooter, I don't mind spending an extra $10 or $20 a session to give it to some folks that are helping out. Maybe it's a charity or something like that. I don't mind at all, and I think
right.
a lot of people in the shooting community feel the same way. Hey, Jeff, you mentioned something about ROs and professionalism. There was a post out on the Steel Target Paint podcast page from Jeremy Dean. He's a local shooter here in Georgia. He's a fantastic guy, and he is shooting lights out right now. He got himself a little open gun that he's done some gunsmithing work. I think that's what Jeremy's trade is, and he's shooting extremely well. But he asked a question out there about if you're at a level 1 or level 2 or level 3, doesn't matter in terms of a match, if an RO or the scorekeeper misses or doesn't call a miss, what do you do?
It's a really good question. I put an answer personally up there on the page. Let's just step back 1 second here. And he prefaced the whole post with, "Where are the podcasts?" So Jeremy,
here you are, Jeremy.
This podcast is being recorded the day after you posted that because Steve and I went, "Oh my God, Jeremy needs a podcast, so we better get one out to him." So this one's for you, buddy.
Hey, I tucked the kids in early just for this, Jeff.
All right, good. Well, listen, so getting to the question, being an RO, and I do it a lot. I helped out Zach at the South Carolina match. I'm going to be an RO at the U.S. Steel. I'm going to be an RO at the World Speed Shoot. I do it because I like to give back, and I take pride and take it seriously. We at the WAC learn the exact range commands, and we use the exact range commands. And if you don't use the exact range commands, you're probably not going to be a red hat. And a lot of that stems from the fact that those are the commands that people expect, but there's a reason why those commands need to be used exactly. And that is, if you ever go to an international match, the same commands are used, and they're used in English. And many shooters don't understand English, but they understand those words. Right. So, I'm going to use a range command that makes what little hair on the back of my neck stand up. When I hear shooter make ready, that's not a range command for USPSA or Steel Challenge. The command is make ready. That being said, most of us wince, but we try to let it go. Other commands like, gas them up. Our buddy Bruce Braxton had some rack 'em, slack 'em, snack 'em, and pack 'em or something like that. Those aren't range commands. And
Sure.
Bruce was the range master at Georgia, and we were joking about it and saying that. And so that being said, sometimes being an RO can be a thankless job.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's a lot of things that you have to do. It's a little easier in Steel than it is in USPSA. Sometimes you get a dead plate and you don't hear a hit. It happened to me at least twice at South Carolina, where I said and one, and the backup RO who was running the pad said, "No, I saw the hit." I said, "Great. That's what needs to happen." But those calls, I personally believe those calls need to come from just the range officer staff and not the competitors. Now that's my opinion. What do you think?
Oh no, it's we take this stuff very seriously. At a local match and a level 1 match, it's a lot more fun and jovial, and I still think that there's a lot of fun in being jovial at a level 2 and a level 3, because I personally shoot my best when I'm relaxed and having a good time. But when it comes to misses or, "Hey buddy, did you get all 5 shots?" and those types of things, that to me is completely up to the RO and even the competitor. So as an example, let's talk about the Georgia match, shooting Smoke and Hope. The very first string of fire that I shot, I don't know, it was like a 1-2-4 or something like that. And, I like to hear my times. I actually stopped, asked the RO. I said, "Could you please check the shot timer to make sure that there was 5 shots recorded?" He looked at me and kind of puzzled, one eyebrow up. He's like, "Man, that was fast." I said, "No, I understand that it was fast, but could you just please verify that we got all 5 shots?" And sure enough, he went through all 5, and I said, "All right, let's rock and roll." Because I think us as shooters, we try to police ourselves because nobody wants to win, whether it's a level 1 match or a state championship or anything else like that, by not earning your time or not earning your penalties, so to speak. And I'm not going to sit here and say that there's not some shooters out here. If you do this for any period of time, you've seen shooters that will contest shots over and over again, which, helps slow down the game. But, there's shooters from time to time, and some people may know who some of those folks are, that will, just assume that they hit all 5. And maybe it's a fault of mine, Jeff. Whenever I shoot and I miss one, I said, "Man, I see that I shot right over the top of number 4." It's
you see that hole in the stick? Yeah, that's mine.
Yeah. Woody Woodpecker, that's me. Do I have to pay you to replace that? But I think that you got to leave it up to the ROs, because I have seen, unfortunately, a situation or two where somebody was shooting and somebody called a miss, and neither RO saw it. Now you've got somebody at the firing line that's got a loaded gun that's starting, that's potentially could get into an altercation with somebody sitting in the cheap seats. I mean, a competitor.
Yep.
That's, that does nothing for the sport. So if you're a competitor and, somebody doesn't call a miss or a hit or, what have you, if you want to have that conversation with the range master, or you want to talk to the RO in between stages one-on-one or after the match one-on-one, if that makes you feel better and sleep at night, up to you. But, this game, it's kind of like watching the NFL. Is it ever going to be perfect? No. We don't have video camera, instant replay, and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But I think based on the people in the sport and the integrity of the people shooting, at the end of the day, Jeff, if my $10 trophy says first on it or third on it, I'm really not going to sleep overnight. You know what I mean? And so I think that's the attitude people need to take as a competitor. It's all about having a good time, and we're not shooting for $10,000 for a placement or something like that. And it's let me tell you a story. So at the Georgia match, this is the type of shooters that we have in our community. Brian with Hunters HD Gold was signing up shooters and for a raffle for some glasses. And so after he gave away a pair of glasses, I think Elsie Baker won them. They were actually Syracuse colors from my hometown. But anyway, so he inadvertently set his iPad above the refrigerator in the clubhouse. And he called me. This is a G-rated show, so I can't tell you exactly what he said. Sorry about that, Brian. But he said, "Dude, I think I lost my $1,100 iPad." And I said, "Well, where did you have it?" And then we walked through. He said, "Dude, it's on top of the refrigerator." I said, "At the clubhouse?" And this is probably, I don't know, Jeff, it had been a week or 2 weeks later. And so I called Glenn. He said, "Hey, hang on. I got a guy down there, blah, blah, blah." And you know what, Jeff? That $1,100 iPad is exactly where Brian left it. So that's the type of people we have in our sport.
Oh, absolutely. I think, I've never done it, only because I'm completely crazy of ever having it happen. But I've known a person or two to have left a gun at a match. Most times it's because it's out of the norm. Like something happens and they have to go and they have to go quick, and maybe a family emergency or something like that. And they're just packing all their stuff up, and their gun might have been in a gun rag and not in their main bag. And I can think of 2 occasions where something like that has happened, and in both cases, everyone on those stages was not saying, "Oh, look, let's raffle off this gun." Everyone was like, "We need to find out whose gun this is and get it back to the owner," because you put yourself in that situation, and that's what you'd want someone to do for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, that's good. And again, I think it's you know what? Because there was probably a lot of other people in and out of that. Probably didn't see it. Maybe they did. The good news is that he got it back. And we'll write it up to there's just great people in the world that wouldn't steal it. So that's good news.
Right. Yep.
So, but yeah, I also agree with you. I said it, you said it. You know, let the ROs do their job. I will admit, and I apologize to them. I got snippy at the Georgia match to a couple of the ROs at the very end because I just couldn't take for the third day listening to Shooter Make Ready and Range is Safe and Going Hot and all the commands that aren't part of our game. And I understand they were volunteers. And as soon as I opened my mouth, I knew I was putting my foot in it. And I immediately apologized to them afterwards. But they are our commands. And you know, a lot of them stem from the old IDPA, or even they may be still the IDPA commands, but you wouldn't just use our commands in IDPA. So for everybody that's out there that's an RO, thinking about being an RO or been an RO, you know, those commands are in the rule book. There's only about 6 or 7 of them. And I think shooters appreciate just hearing the same thing every time. At least I do. Shoot.
Yeah, you know what, Jeff? You have a lot more training and a lot more experience when it comes to being an RO, and you know, I'm envious about you because you've put forth that time and effort to do that and really give back in that sort of way. So my hat goes off to you. You know, for me, if somebody says make ready, that doesn't really bother me as much as a shooter. But when it comes to the, you know, are you ready? Stand by. You know, there's a couple of those. You know, if we miss a standby in there, or you know, if that beat not,
or the how about the ever popular? Are you ready? Stand by. Beep.
Oh, that's exactly what I was just gonna say. What is the rule? Is it 1 to 3 seconds or 1 to 4 seconds?
It's
1 to 4 seconds.
And interestingly enough, what they recommend for steel is for each shooter, for their 5 strings that they're going to shoot that you're going to run them, to have the same cadence. Okay? Yeah. So, and because this game is not about, they're not worried about whether or not the shooter is trying to time the cadence. It's about allowing the shooters to shoot fast. So,
right.
Where in USPSA, for each shooter, they will tell you to vary your cadence slightly. In steel, you can vary your cadence between the shooters, but when you get to that shooter, keep the same cadence. And I tend to have a very, you know, standard cadence, and I've learned over time that, you know, it's right in that sweet spot, because there's some great ROs out there, but when it's, are you ready? Stand by. And you want to, you know, you're waiting and you want to turn around and go, just hit the buzzer.
You know, so, that's probably one of my pet peeves is those commands, you know, and it's somewhat consistent, but probably, you know, for those that know me, I'm probably one of the most laid back competitors you'll ever meet. The only time that, and it wasn't a heated discussion, but you know, it was probably 2 years ago. We had somebody that
I think I was there. Was I there? No, I think keep going.
No, I'm not sure if you were at this. Maybe you were. It was actually at a Rimfire Challenge match where,
okay,
you know, are you ready? Stand by. Beep. I went. Oh, I actually lowered the gun, and you know, after 4 seconds in my head, which you know really feels like a long period of time, I stopped, and he was getting ready to hit the button. I said, you know, you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm okay. And I said, so, you know, you got to push the button on the side of that timer and it makes a beep. He said, oh, no, I know how it works. Okay. You know, I was actually speechless because I knew the RO, and I said, so just so I understand, because I shoot a lot of steel challenge and shoot a little bit of rimfire challenge. I said, what's the cadence supposed to be? Oh, 1 to 4 seconds. I said, okay. Well, we went past 4. Is the battery good? He said, oh no, we're good. And so, and I wasn't trying to be a smart guy or anything, but I was trying to understand what was going on, because I thought there was an issue, or, sometimes as a shooter, you hear stuff behind you, especially if you have electronic hearing protection. And so, you don't know if there's an unsafe condition behind you or something like that. And he said, oh no, I hit it right at 4 seconds. I said, oh, okay. But it was just kind of like, taking the fun out of the sport a little bit to, and I've heard at other rimfire challenge matches where they'll put the timer on random, and it's kind of like, yeah, okay, I mean, because I think even then you can get a short beat there as well.
Yeah, putting it on random, I don't personally think is a good idea, and that's just a personal preference. I'm not saying that people don't do it, but I like that immediate beep when I press the button as an RO. I thought you were going to mention the and this is another thing that we'll talk, as we're talking about ROs here, and it's when they miss a shot.
Yeah.
And you just threw down a blazing run, and they go, I'm sorry, I only have 4 hits. And
oh yeah, 4 captured shots on the timer.
4 captured shots, yes. And what I'll do, and again, this is for all the people that are running shooters or thinking about running shooters. If that ever happens to me, and it happens. Sometimes you get quiet guns. Sometimes you're not quite paying attention how you're holding the timer, where you're holding the timer. Is I will then look at the backup RO or the second RO or the person running the pad, and I will say, I need you to guarantee you're looking at hits and misses.
Right.
And then what I'll do is I'll keep my eye. I'm still listening for hits and misses, but I'm no longer doing a visual verification of that, and I'm watching the timer. So if I get 4 hits, but I know the timer flipped on the 5th shot, I know I've still got a correct time.
Right.
And that's it's just Jeff, another thing that you have to deal with as a shooter and as an RO. And nobody likes to hear it. Nobody likes to see it. But when it happens, you just have to apologize to the shooter and go, I'm sorry, I only got 4 shots. And they have to just take that string over again.
Yeah.
And sometimes they get lucky, because I've had it happen with a very quiet gun where the person's actually taken 6 shots. We know they've taken 6 shots, and there's only 4 on the timer.
Yeah, and Jeff, that's why I put, because before I didn't have a compensator on my rimfire rifle iron gun, so that's why I got a Tandem Cross Game Changer Pro combo. Get your Game Changer Pro comp at tandemcross.com. But that's why I put the
plug.
I know, right? Hey, Brian, Jake, what's going on, fellas? But that's why that's why I put a comp on there. And since I've done that, I haven't had an issue. But M&P 1522s are notorious for being quiet guns. So
Yep.
Yeah,
we've got a guy at the range that shoots an old Ruger bull barrel rimfire rifle and has no comp. And every time he comes up, it's just habit for me now to look at the R and go, you're on hits and misses. I'm watching the timer.
Right.
So, so we get his times. So, yeah, but I would recommend everybody out there to if you get an opportunity to take the NROI, the National Range Officer Institute course, and become a certified RO, and take the Steel Challenge certification. There are some little intricacies that are good to know as a shooter. The perfect example would be if you get a miss called, you have the right, and if you believe you have a hit, you have the right to go to ask and say, I want to go look right now. And if the RO says we'll go look later, you go, no, the rules are we're going to go look right now. Because, you can't verify 3 hits on the 4th string if there's 4 hits because you double shot a state, a plate.
Right. Yep.
And a lot of people know that. But again, and it's a good way, like I said, it's a good way to give back to the sport, especially even if you're at a level 1 match, and the guys that are normally ROing are the only, there's only one guy on the stage and it's his turn to shoot, being able to pick up that timer, use the right commands. Same thing with, practice score. I think everybody is using practice score, whether it's on an iPad or an Android device. Learn how to do some of the basics for that. Pick up that pad, help out. It keeps the match moving along. And, we all like to shoot. Nobody wants to be at the range for 6 hours if you only got to be there for 4 because everybody's pitching in and getting stuff done.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm off my soapbox about being a range officer.
Really? I didn't notice you all the way up there, Jeff. All right, man. Well, it was good talk. It was good talking tonight. Looks like we're just about out of time tonight, but great discussion. Great question, Jeremy. Thanks for reaching out to us. And if anybody else has any questions they'd like to have answered or at least our opinion on, please go out and post them out on our Facebook group page, Steel Target Paint Podcast, and we'll make sure we'll get them answered for you.
Absolutely. Well, Steve, I think I'm going to see you at next at US Steel, right?
Yes, sir. Did I tell you, Jeff, that is 15 minutes from my house? I love that range. Used to be my home range.
Awesome. Yeah, I am looking forward to it. This is going to be my 3rd year going, and I'm looking to have a good time. There's a lot of people that show up. We get all our good some friends from the West Coast. Trenton comes out with his dad, and we'll usually see some people that you wouldn't normally see at some of the other matches that are showing up for those. So if you see me there at the match, grab me, shake my hand. I'd love to say hi to everybody. And if you are shooting, I hope you have a great match and shoot all your peak times.
All right. Sounds great, Jeff. Have a good night, and we'll see you out on the range soon.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks again. Bye.